All right, Inmendham, this is a really nice opportunity for me to respond to a video of yours, one that you're putting out. I don't think as a response, but just as a first move. You're initiating this idea, and it's great. I'm very interested in it. I think it's an exceptional idea, but I want to make sure I understand it before I try to participate in the conversation. So I want to paraphrase what I think you're saying or suggesting, and then love to hear if you think I'm on the right track or not. I think you're suggesting that there would be a place for the application of mathematics in the discussion, consideration, or application of morality or moral judgment in the area of ethics. Very intriguing. If I understand correctly, you're suggesting the development of a scale, and this is important whether I'm right about this or not. But I think what you're suggesting is a scale that would allow a more objective approach to moral judgment. In particular, it sounds like you're saying it could be a tool, a societal tool, a real benefit to a society that wants to lend objectivity to its required, its necessary moral judgments. If that's the case, that's great. I love that idea. Make you go on to make some suggestions if you were to try to develop this formula, which would constitute the scale, I'm calling it. And that is that we would you suggest a unit of measure. You would call it need. You said, again, not to get caught up in semantics. It could be need, suffering, want, lack, but whatever that word we settle on is, you're trying to say that would be the unit of value. And if I understand where you're going, if we could then take the unit of value and assign values to, and then I'm thinking you're saying human or not human. I want to know if it's particular for human, if it limits itself to any kind of animal that takes action, any kind of object that takes action, meaning I don't know, at what level it applies or doesn't apply, but I'll say human, you correct me. But place a value then on human action, and I'm thinking even inaction probably has to be assigned a value, since we're trying to measure a net decrease in need. And I've got some thoughts on that, but again, this video is just to see if I understand where you're going with that. So that was your first obvious thing, is we have to come up with a unit of measure. You make a suggestion that then is applied to action or inaction. Maybe there's other things you can tell us that it would apply to anything that is subject to a moral or ethical judgment. Okay, so if I'm understanding so far, then I want to double check this. Would we can we all assume, or am I understanding correctly then, that this is a human convention, a scale, or whatever? It's not going to comment on or evidence for moral absolutes or whatnot. I mean, you kind of talked about the social contracts, that type of thing. But we're not saying that this necessarily applies in any way to the subject of absolute morals, etc. And as a consequence of that, it is going to be this scale and formula, if it were to be developed, would still, its value would be dependent on a society's willingness to accept it or adapt it, possibly encoding it in law, because again, unless their society is willing to enforce it or force its acceptance, then it isn't going to become the measure for that society. There'll be other things, kind of like our society is working today. So it's based on some sort of acceptance, by democratic process or whatever, to get some of that value. And even if it weren't to get to the point of being accepted and encoded in law for a society, it still might be an effective tool to add objectivity in the fields of science. If they're trying, up to date, we always are saying how science can't really weigh in when it comes to moral or ethical questions. And this could at least allow some common ground and add some objectivity to science weighing in on that. And it might possibly bring some accountability to the religious community if, in fact, people are in agreement that the scale has something to say, that it does add or lend objectivity to these types of decisions. So there you go. That's my paraphrase, and I have a great interest in what you're suggesting. But would you let me know, give you a chance to maybe clarify if other people are hearing what I'm hearing and we're not quite right, or a chance to reinforce if what I'm hearing is correct, and then even add to your idea if this stimulates anything new. So that's it. I'm hoping to hear from you. Bye.